for those ready to move past the 12-sign parlor games and truly align with the cosmic intelligence. Join us as we decode the significance of the July new moon. Hey there, Truth Seeker. Welcome to the Star Kittens community where we discuss 13-sign astrology. Are you in alignment with your divine design? Do you want to master the metaphysical reality? Open the doors of perception. Each planetary body is an archetype, a template, if you will, that helps us interpret human behavior and the world around us. The more awake and aware we are, the more synchronicity will show up in your life. Our focus today is the Gemini Stellium and the Uranus-Mars conjunction in Taurus. To help us reach more souls with this important message, please like, share and subscribe. There's a lot going on. So let's jump in. Kia ora, David.
Kia ora.
We started before we recorded, just talking about the interesting path that 12-sign astrologers take with things that don't actually happen. And we don't often talk about the 12-signers, but it's just so fascinating how astrology is one of these things that I feel people use to get a better understanding of who they are. And yet, I don't think that everyone that follows 12-sign astrology is actually following something that doesn't exist. Whereas 13-sign astrology, we talk about the sun and the moon. At this upcoming new moon, they are on top of each other in Gemini. And when you use an app or you type in where is the sun located now, truly in the astronomy of the world, of the universe, it will tell you that on the 14th of July, it is in Gemini. Sorry, I just had to get that rant over because I feel saddened that so many people are just led down this garden path that is not the truth.
Well, yeah, I agree. And, for many, astrology is just a bit of fun and a bit of a parlour game and a bit of pop psychology, and that's fine. I mean, it's for entertainment purposes, because if people are truly seriously following astrology for the insights of both what it can deliver both individually and collectively, the first thing they would do is come into alignment with the correct positions of the planets. The fact that, so many people resonate to 12-sign astrology, I certainly did for many, many years, for decades. So I get it and I understand it. But, once you discover the true 13 sign, I guess it was like at the days of, was it Copernicus or the old scientists where they finally discovered that, I'm not sure which way it is, was it the sun? Was it all the planets revolved around the sun, or the sun revolved around all the planets? They had it the wrong way around, and finally the scientific community realised that the consensus around that was incorrect. But even so, it took decades and decades and decades for there to be a shift, and I kind of see this in the same light. I think that there's a joke on us sometimes, that the cosmic intelligence plays a bit of a joke on us, really, because the 13 sign system has always existed. It might not have been called that, but of course Ophiuchus has always been, it didn't just appear as a constellation, it's always been there. The sun has always been traversing through that on its ecliptic. It's always only ever spent 7, maybe 8 days in Scorpio, depending on whether it's maybe a leap year or whatever, but on average 7 days. There's so many facets to this, but we could go down a massive rabbit hole about it, and so we will focus on bringing what we believe to be our truth. I was reflecting on this the other day myself in terms of, there's so much talk also about timeline bifurcation. Anybody who's seeking truth and is going down the spiritual and awakening path will inevitably and invariably come across people talking about a timeline split. And however that's described, it's generally talked about as happening around about now, around about 2026, 27 maybe, but we're in that timeline split. And it feels to me that part of being able to ride the wave, if you like, of the timeline split is being aware of the correct position of the planets, especially at this time when I don't know how many reels and things have popped up for me, even though I don't believe that. I'm surprised the algorithm serves them up to me, but on Facebook, on Instagram, I get that many reels about, Jupiter's just gone into Leo, and that's a sign of this, that, and the next thing. And then we've got, what is it? Is it Pluto's in Aquarius, where it's clearly not in Aquarius. And that's a massive and fundamental planet when you talk about planetary moves and shifts going on in the collective. And Neptune's gone into Aries, when in fact Neptune is in his own sign of Pisces. And Saturn being the other one, where are they saying?
So that's also supposedly, I think, in late stages of Aries, but it's sitting at 22 degrees Pisces at the time of this new moon. So
and will be there for a while. So, you got Pluto, you got Neptune, you've got Jupiter, you got all of these big planets that people are talking about. And, what I would say is I don't think the interpretations in and of themselves are wrong, because they're actually quite accurate. I sometimes listen to the more well-regarded 12-sign astrologers just to hear how they speak about and interpret about planetary positions. And, without naming names, some of them are very, very, very articulate and very graceful, and the way that they communicate is incredibly powerful, and I certainly draw from that. But it's just that they've got the timing wrong. And for me, timing is everything, and not everyone uses astrology for timing. It can be used for that purpose, but certainly there's a rhythm and a cycle to astrology, and being in alignment with the correct placement, knowing that this new moon, for example, is in Gemini, not in Cancer, I think they're saying. Is it Cancer? Yeah, so, completely different energies. But as I said, we'll go down a rabbit hole, so we'll focus on what we believe is a truthful interpretation of this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, let's start not with the Sun and Moon position this time. We're starting with a different conjunction. So, to set the scene, the new moon happens here in New Zealand on the 14th of July at 9:43 p.m. And we'll start off with this other conjunction, which is between Uranus at 10 degrees Taurus and Mars at 17 degrees Taurus. So what is that telling you?
Well, the first thing that my mind always does, because I love to do this, and we did this last time with the exact time of 9:43, when you add that up, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 is in fact the number in the major arcana of the Rider-Waite deck of the card called the Tower. But the Tower is related, of course, to the astrological energy of Uranus. And that Tower card is a very dramatic card. If anyone ever draws tarot, and we certainly do in this household, I love the Rider-Waite deck. You've got other ones that you use as well. But to me, the OG, the original gangster version of the tarot, the one that's been around a long time, is the Rider-Waite deck. And so it's a nice place to start. And it always heartens me when we get a resonance like that. Last time we had the exact time of the new moon, was it a full moon, and there was all that 11 energy coming through. Now we've got, not only in the numerology, but in that placement of the Mars and Uranus conjunct, and the exact moment that happens in terms of this new moon, they're not exactly conjunct, but at the time of this new moon, which is 9:43, as you say, that's a 16 in the numerology, and 16 is definitely the Tower. And the Tower invokes, when one looks at that card, it invokes the idea of disruption, of lightning hitting a tower, and when you look in detail at that card, you will see actually people being cast out of this massive sort of rock edifice. This what looked like a solid structure gets struck by lightning, and people are cast out. So with that in mind, when we have Mars versus Mars and Uranus together, specifically in Taurus, we have very much the energy of the warrior Mars, the enlightener or awakener Uranus, in the energy of Mother Earth. And so this is a highly energetic combination of energies, and highly unpredictable by nature. We've talked before, and I would caution astrologers that talk about this and that will happen when it comes to Uranus, because we don't know what will happen. If we look at the metaphor of and the correspondences of Uranus with lightning, then even if it's a bleak, cold, wintry, stormy day, there's no guarantee that there will be lightning. Even if the weather, the meteorological people say, well, there's going to be lightning, even they can't be absolutely sure. So what that says to me immediately when you're dealing with Uranus energy is that it is inherently unpredictable. Therefore, we cannot be determinative. We cannot declare that this or that or the next thing will happen. All we can say is that some of these events may happen when we have these energies of Mars, Uranus in Taurus, an Earth sign, or they may not happen. They may be experienced individually, or they may be experienced on the collective level. Certainly, the collective, the reference there is that Uranus is the ruler or overseer or guardian, if you like, of the Aquarian sign, and Aquarius is definitely related to the collective. And yet Taurus is very much a grounded energy, and Mars is absolutely that of the individual. So we are talking about perspectives of Mars and Uranus and Taurus, of both individual and collective experiences of this fierce, unpredictable lightning type energy, striking the physical edifice of our bodies or striking the environment. What could happen in this case when we combine those three, Mars, Uranus, Taurus, is a manifestation is in our physical bodies. So this could manifest as sickness or a breakthrough, equally in health. It could, when you talk about Taurus, Earth, Mother Earth, and Mars and Uranus, it could be relating to seismic activities. If you think about schisms or splits in the ground, it could be relating to volcanic discharge. It's certainly the energy of breakdown or breakthrough and awakening to our physical nature. What comes to mind is certainly earthquakes, and there's been a few of those. Some astrologers will say, well, that's because of Mars and Uranus. In fact, I heard one before talking about that some of these earthquakes, and there's been one in Venezuela, I think there was another one in Japan, and they've been big. And this astrologer was saying that this was because Mars and Uranus are together, but of course they were talking about in Gemini. But Mars and Uranus are not in Gemini, they're in Taurus, which would actually make sense. That could actually be a manifestation of those energies. You could actually see earthquakes, seismic activity, and everything to do with that, because you have this lightning energy being contained within the physical vessel, i.e. our bodies, our environment, or Mother Earth herself. So we have this awakening to the physical nature, and that could be both anything from a terrifying experience to something that just gives us a bit of a nudge in the right direction. Of course, there's another aspect of this, a darker aspect, which is that of Mars representing war and conflict, and Uranus in conjunction with Mars could see an eruption of military hostilities. That's a possibility. I think about the Middle East and perhaps Russia, Ukraine as well. But again, these things are not predicted, they are simply possibilities, and I have to make that clear. If Mars and Uranus, because Mars moves reasonably quickly, this is a fleeting energy. So even if there was, say, something like a war breakout or a renewal of hostilities or strikes, as they like to call them in the media, it wouldn't be for long. It would be sort of it would come and go. But there's another couple of aspects to this. There's the idea of a cosmos is giving us a bit of a push. So if Uranus is that 11 energy, the awakening energy, and we are physically resisting something, it might be that the cosmos or the energies of the higher energies or higher planes are giving us a push to start something physical. Thinking, it could be a physical exercise regime, or it could be clearing the garden, it could be cleaning up your backyard, it could be decluttering your house. You think about environment, you think about something that you suddenly do and you see the purpose of it as being cathartic or clearing or energizing in a way. So there's a decluttering energy, and of course, there's that expression, we can't see the wood for the trees. Well, maybe when Uranus strikes Mars and Taurus, we can see the wood and the trees. So that expression of can't see the wood for the trees, can't see what's right in front of you. Perhaps after a Uranus interaction, we get to see both the wood and the trees. And the last piece of this is that actually there's a trine of that Mars, Uranus and Taurus. There's a trine up to Pluto in Capricorn. And that's, again, Capricorn's another earth sign, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. To me, that's just another confirmation that this is going to be a physical manifestation of these energies, and there could be some kind of transformational transmutation of negative energies in the physical environment, in ourselves, in the environment around us. But of course, most people will associate Pluto with that of transformation. So when you combine Uranus and Pluto in a trine, in this case, this is a positive transformation. So as I said, it's something to be excited about. It may not happen. I've sort of painted the picture of some possibilities, and that's all we can ever talk about when it comes to Uranus, because of its unpredictable nature.
Yeah. Thank you. I enjoyed it, and thank you for finishing off with the positive trine to Pluto. It's always nice to have that positive tailwind from the universe at times of change. So let's move on to this new moon now. And yes, we chart a lot of planetary body on our 13 sign charts. Of course, it's the main planets of the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, that most people will know, but we also include trans-Neptunians and fixed stars, asteroids. So Gemini is really busy, and I'm just going to name the ones that we are going to talk about now. So we are going to talk about Sirius, Hades, Kronos, Mercury, the Sun, the Moon, and Icarus. Shall we start with the beginning of Sirius and then move our way through? Is that how you would like to do it?
Yeah, and I'm just briefly going to touch on these and to lay to set the background. Of course, we Gemini is known as the twins. The gilf or the symbol for Gemini is, of course, probably one of the most well-known in astrology. Even for people who don't really follow it, they will get those two pillars with a sort of crescent moon, half moon on the top and on the bottom as well. So the energy of Gemini is by nature two-sided, and therefore there is always both a positive and a negative interpretation for anything that is talked about. When you come to Gemini, you can't talk about just one manifestation of the energy. There's always two manifestations, and they can be at conflict with one another. When you talk about they can be a conflict or they can be harmonious. So bear that in mind when we're talking about our interpretation of these 7 planetary bodies that are all lined up. The first thing that I said, and you'll recall this when I was looking at this, was wow, if Gemini's communication, then certainly the universal intelligence, source intelligence, our guides, our angels, the higher realms, whatever we want to assign to that communication, is certainly saying to those following 13 sign astrology, boy, we've got something to say here, and it isn't just one thing, it's many things, and they aren't just a cacophony of noise. There's actually quite a synchronicity and harmony between all of these 7 planetary bodies. So I'll do my best to just go through briefly what I think each one of them actually means. So the star Sirius, which is the first part of the 7-sign stellium, they call it, Stellium. A stellium in astrology is where you get 3 or more, some will say 4 or more, but certainly 3 or more planetary bodies all together. And they are loosely in a conjunction because we have the sun and the moon together. The way we interpret astrology is that there's what they call a 10-degree orb. So anything within 10 degrees of the sun and moon, who are smack bang on top of each other, obviously with a new moon, so you got 10 degrees either side, and that's how we pick up these 7 energies, or these 7 planetary bodies. The first in that line is actually the star Sirius, which is a fixed star, which is always in Gemini. But in terms of what does that mean in Gemini, that to me is an intellectual breakthrough in terms of what Sirius represents. Or Sirius for us represents the energy of what I call the scientists of the zodiac. So anybody who follows Lisa Renee, or there's Patty Corey, and there's a number of channels and seers and very enlightened people, spiritual people who talk about and bring through. There are a lot of people who talk about the Pleiadian energies, and there are others who talk about the Lyran energies. There are others who talk about the Arcturian energies, and there is a whole bunch of people that talk about the Sirius energies, the star Sirius, and from the Sirius star system. And each of those, Pleiades, Arcturus, Lyra, and Sirius, and others, but these are the primary ones that people will bring through when they're engaging with the spiritual and the astrological and the more mystical aspects of life, and they come across Sirius. I consider, especially having read a lot of Patty Curry and Lisa Renee's work, that the nature of their communication, Gemini, is incredibly precise and scientific in nature. So the Sirians seem to be experts in genetics. They seem to be experts in systems and processes. They seem to be experts in timelines, ascension protocols, stargates, meridians, portals, black holes, all of that kind of really interesting metaphysical and semi-scientific sort of astro-cosmic science. This is in the area of star Sirius. So when you are blending the star Sirius energy with the Gemini energy of communication and thought and reason and insight, what you're focusing on or what you draw out of it, and it isn't for everybody, it's actually quite hard to follow some of this stuff. But I know that there are a lot. You've got some friends who are all over the grid lines and the ley lines and the crystals beneath the ground resonating, and particular points on the planet which have very high frequency energies that are intersecting. And obviously on the dark side, there are lots and lots of groups, Skull and Bones, Masons, and so on, who've taken all of this to another level, right? And they've worked things like stargates and numbers and the science of numbers and numerology. They work all of this, and this is all, I believe, is in the kind of the domain of the star Sirius. So once, people who are interested in that will look at it. People who aren't, just can't deal with it. I get that. It's, for me, I love the star Sirius energy, but I also understand that, timelines, stargates, ascension protocols, chakra systems, all of that isn't for everybody. Some people are more intuitive, more emotional, but this is very intellectual energy, and it's very much compatible with the Geminis. That's the star Sirius. Hades, most people will get the Hades energy straight. It's not that difficult to interpret Hades, also known as Pluto. We've talked before about the Greco-Roman mythologies of where the same deities have they have the same sort of qualities and attributes, but they have given different names. Well, this is an example of that. So Hades, Pluto, this all refers to the birth, death, rebirth process, cycles of time, exploration of our hidden nature. You and I were talking about that before with your Scorpio energy. Of course, Pluto and Scorpio are very much linked. So Hades energy is about being uncomfortable, or dealing with our uncomfortable and unexpressed side, of our nature, what many people call the shadow, the depths of our soul. You drew a card, you might want to touch on some of this. Dark night of the soul. This is this Hades Pluto energy. So this is part of the 7 planetary body. So anything to do with Hades is cathartic and clearing, but tough going. It's emotionally draining. It's really confronting. But the Gemini energy brings insights and clarity. If you want to circle back to that, just put a pin in that, and I'll just cover these others, and then you might want to touch on your own experiences of this sort of Hades, birth, death, dark night of the soul experience if you want to. Kronos again related to, in the Greco-Roman, Kronos and Saturn are related. Same deity, different names. But very briefly, leadership and governance come under the domain of Kronos. Time, Kronos, Saturn's the lord of time. The reaper of time, and karma. So anything to do with Kronos is to do with mastery and persistence. It's to do with reaping and sowing. It's to do with reward for endeavour. It's to do, when you have the Gemini energy, of communicating, particularly leaders and rulers communicating clearly, but it's also us understanding intellectually the idea and the concepts of time and cycles, reaping and sowing, and how cause and effect truly work. That is the area of Saturn mastery, or Kronos, Saturn Kronos. This is Kronos, just to be clear, but I refer to Saturn just like I did Hades, Pluto, because they are the similar energies, although they are not part of the 7 planetary body stellium. Mercury, very simple, mind, intellect, thinking, analysis, processing, mental processing, learning, our early education time frame or period, relating to also how we learned in the early phases of our life. And so we're talking here about Mercury being in its own sign. So an extra sort of amplification of all of the ideas of the mind, of thinking, of analysis and mental processing, reason, rational, critical thought, all of those things. The sun and the moon, very simply for me, when the sun and the moon are together at a new moon, this is the one time in the lunar cycle where you get perfect integration and balance between what some would call the yin and the yang energies. The masculine and the feminine come together as one. When in Gemini, what that refers to is whole brain thinking. So instead of being just left brain dominant or right brain dominant, it's the ability to use both sides, to multitask, to see the big picture as well as the detail. Or put another way, if the moon represents emotional intelligence and the sun in Gemini represents mental acuity or smarts, it's the combination of those things. If you had that in a male or a female, you've got somebody who's pretty onto it, as it were. So there's a harmonization of polarity, or opposites, or union of opposites, or what I like to call sun and moon together in Gemini. So hot and cold are the same thing. There's no such thing as love and hate. There's no such thing as polarity. There's only the middle ground, which is what some would call the third way, or the third energy. Finally, we have Icarus, and we were musing on Icarus the other day. Is the last part of the 7. Icarus is to do with our relationship with risk. And we spent a lot of time talking about you with your Icarus conjunct Jupiter, I think it was, and I said that it's about calculated risk. When you are going to expand, you will actually spend some time thinking that through rather than just doing it or being swept up. So Icarus is to do with risk, relationship with risk. It's about understanding the process and the principles of risk and reward, which kind of is tied back to Kronos as well with those lessons. There's an expression that I like: nothing ventured, nothing gained. Icarus is to do with risk management, expansion and contraction, thinking about and assessing risk, the idea of that we look before we leap, and also that we reflect on where we have taken risks, or also where we have avoided risks out of fear, out of concern that we might make a mistake, this sort of thing. So Icarus, when in Gemini, is very much about thinking through the idea, and that's an analytical process of thinking through, how do I deal with risk? What's my relationship with risk? Some people are natural born risk takers, some people are naturally averse, and it's, I guess, finding, when we talk about those pillars, it's understanding what's the most risky thing I could do and what's the most safe thing that I can do, and probably find somewhere in the middle as we approach different things in our life. Would be how I'd interpret the Icarus energy.
And that was the 7 planetary bodies forming the stellium. So just to go for me to that Hades energy, yes, I pulled some cards today. They are just a deck of oracle cards. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you'll be familiar with oracle cards. And I like doing it quickly, not taking a whole hour, pulling 7 cards and understanding how they all interact with each other, yada, yada, yada. So this morning in front of the fire, I pulled 3. And in this particular card deck, the second card was to do with the challenges that you've overcome, but they still linger now. So what is still lingering in your life? And exactly, it was card number 11. Dark night of the soul, and then the subtext says life brings new meaning. And I think that is so important to keep in mind, that when you feel like you have hit rock bottom, or you just don't know where to turn to now, is the start of a new beginning. And I have many things to be incredibly grateful for. My life is full of abundance. However, the life that I'm living right now, I didn't envisage that 10 years ago. And so the stage that I'm in, my progressed sun is in Scorpio. It's really going inwards and recognizing the spiritual being that I am, and putting that into this lifetime now, and using the tools at hand. And for me, 13 sign astrology is definitely part of that, using oracle cards to just kind of tune into your guides. For me, oracle cards, tarot, even pulling angel cards, the question I ask is, what is my message for today? And I feel like the guides will use that imagery to then show you, to help you remember, or to fall into line with what the energy for you is. So that's how I use my my oracle cards and many other things. So that's enough about me. Just for the audience, to set that scene of that 7 planetary body stellium. Sirius, the first one, is sitting at 13 degrees Gemini, and Icarus, the last one, is sitting at 23 degrees Gemini. So all these ones, these beautiful energies, coming together at this new moon. And the sun, the moon, and Mercury also make a square to Pallas, Athena, who sits at 28 degrees Pisces. So let's finish off there, David. What is this square to Pallas telling you?
Put simply, Sun, Moon, Mercury together in a square to Pallas, Athena is about being strategic, about being savvy, about being cunning, calculated and clever. Whenever you are plotting and planning something, which is very much Mercury Gemini energy, it's the energy of thought. We've talked about that. Pallas Athena is saying, just be smart about the way that you do things. Even be cunning, even be calculated, be very clever, be strategic. Be sophisticated in the way that you approach issues like risk, for example, the Icarus energy. So, there's not a lot to say about Pallas Athena there other than, it's just, it's a nice sort of reminder that what's the classic thing? Again, the Gemini energy see both the detail and the big picture. Well, that's Pallas Athena. Anybody who is strategic and savvy and smart with the way they deal with whatever situations, whether it be a Hades, dark night of the soul, whether it be dealing with leadership and governance and Kronos, whether it be dealing with, you might be very much a right brain person and you're trying to develop your left brain skills, the Mercury, whether you're dealing with the ideas of integration and the union of opposites with the sun and moon, whether you're dealing with the science of the cosmos and genetics and timelines and stargates. It's about being strategic and savvy and sophisticated. And again, it's not for everybody, but for some that will resonate very clearly indeed. So that's about it, I think.
Wonderful.
Yep, covers all the bases.
We spoke about so many amazing energies that are painted by source consciousness in this arrangement in the true sky. So if you are intrigued, you can get yourself a chat. We've put 2 different chats now on our Buy Us a Coffee page. You either get your chat for $5 or you pay more and get an interpretation of your sun, moon and rising sign as well. Or you treat yourself and book a natal reading. Please sign up for our newsletter where we will keep you up to date with when the new episodes are available, and give us a follow on Instagram.
And Telegram and YouTube. All the socials.
All the socials. Thank you so much, David. Ngā mihi.
Namaste.
Until next time.